Good afternoon. Um, I hope you are still able to concentrate. And in the very introduction, I'd like to say I want to make sure that it doesn't come across that we are just representatives of one line of thought. Well, we are, but we try to invite, well, there are some discrepancies among us too, but we were trying to invite some proponents of the present day coalition led by the Smer party, but none of them was interested or had time or was willing to come. And even in the second panel, some people who originally confirmed their participation, they did not come. But I hope it will be beneficial even without their presence. But I will be talking about this mistaken direction of consolidation that is based on the thesis of less savings and more taxation. I will mention several lines of departure, and then I will suggest where I think lies the problem of consolidation, and in conclusion I will draft a certain alternative. Truly a great problem, not only in Slovakia but in the entire Eurozone, lies in the constant and ever-growing debt, the overall debt, but especially the public debt. You can see at this graph, you can see the growth of public debt per capita in the Eurozone. And these are really alarming data, because you can see that in 2007 until 2011, public debt per capita grew by 8,000 euros per person, and these are huge numbers. If we calculate also toddlers and everybody, in 2011 public debt is almost 25,000 euros per year. And obviously there are these representatives among politicians, for example the new French president François Hollande, and also our prime minister, maybe later even, maybe it is even president, but that is a different topic. We're trying to alleviate, or they're trying to light the problem of cutting public expenses. That we should be focusing on economical growth, not on saving expenses. But this is a top thesis that doesn't make sense, because economists who understand public finances, they do know that the government redistributes the money already created by somebody else, and saving money does not mean cutting economical growth. On the other hand, it means that it leaves space for those who make this economical growth. So we should pay close attention to what politicians and even some quasi-economists, what they actually do say. And obviously public debt is just a result of some accumulated deficit of public finances on a year-on-year basis, and this is also the problem of opening scissors between public incomes and expenses, and we can see this in the case of Slovakia, because this abyss is not closing up, and the difference is really great, and the consequence is every year is deficit of public finances. In 2009 and 2010, or 2008 and 2009, it was a great increase in public expenses and also in the deficit. It was still at the level of 4% of GDP. I'd like to point out that the deficit lies in, well, the substance of the problem, as it was already suggested, because many of us agree on the fact that it is built on the growth of public expenses, on the continuous growth of public expenses, and these are on top of the already high level of redistribution. And this is not just the case of Slovakia, it is also a case of other countries, and not only in the European Union, but the European Union has been facing this problem more than the rest of the world, and this is connected with the long-term problem of several decades of growing mentality of entitlement. And this is the great problem where people, as if they had an illusion of asking from the government, expecting that the government will provide them something, and they are less and less able to take care of themselves. And this is just few numbers from the conditions of Slovakia, where public expenses in 2006 until 2010 cumulatively increased by almost 8 billion euros. That's just calculated by 30 to get a value in Slovak korunas, and it's huge numbers. And we know that we need consolidation 1.5 billion euros. And after increasing these public expenses, we do not see any better quality of services provided by the state. We do not see anything like this. But public expenses just keep on increasing. And also another thesis that many politicians and the Ministry of Finance like to highlight, and many pro-government economists also say this, and this is that Slovakia has a low taxation and low healthcare taxes. It is not true. I will quote data of the recent New Direction and IEM study, and you can see that in the overall EU, and EU is overtaxed. In the EU, Slovakia is one of the countries that has the highest level of taxation. If we take average taxation calculated against expenses of salaries, then the overall taxation is 40-something%. So the taxation is quite heavy, and if we calculate excise taxes in the methodology used by the Hayek Foundation, then average taxation is more than 50% of payroll expenses, and the net disposable income is 40-something%, and this is quite low, because this does not include local taxes and some fees that do not appear as taxes, but these are fees paid to different authorities. So the thesis that Slovakia has low level of taxation is not correct. A few words on this in the second part of my brief presentation. Where do I see main consequences and problems of this present day direction, whether it is direction as such or as the name of the political party in consolidating financial situation? First of all, it is that taxation is prevailing over saving, and pro-government economists as well as politicians highlight that there is increased emphasis on higher progressivity, arguing that solidarity and fairness must be preserved, and they do not understand the term of solidarity that has nothing to no place in systems of obligatory redistribution. But with using equality, or the Janoschik complex of the Robin Hood complex, and these kind of theses that are very popular in Slovakia, and they are being brought back to life. What is also symptomatic is that this consolidation is marked by selective approach of higher taxation of the richer, or of more dynamic people, of more profitable people. That means people and corporations that are more dynamic, that are working harder, and this is very dangerous, and this can bring forth several serious unintended consequences. And this term, introduced by Hayek into the economical theory, is very important in practical observations by economists. We can see various unintended consequences. For example, one thing that is quite clear to many of you is that lowering disposable resources and also limiting possibilities for investments and savings that are of key importance for any economical growth in the long term. Then limiting business activities of private entrepreneurs and also people who try to be as much independent from the state as possible. Here I see the problem a bit differently as Mr. Špirko, and we've discussed this in the past. I tend to see this more like Mr. Ďurana, and I think that people who try to be independent from the state should get independent from the state, and they should pay as little as possible. It would be ideal if everybody paid as little as possible, but especially private entrepreneurs, physical persons, they should pay as little as possible, and they can get into the risk that they will be getting minimum pension benefits or maybe even nothing. And this is the strength of this group of people, that they can be independent from the state. At the same time, which is less visible and it could be the result of such measures, it could be higher prices. We will discuss this in the second panel on financial institutions and bank fees and various other products, of increasing bank fees for banking services or increasing prices in different other regulated industries or lower quality of services being provided. And obviously what is very important, several corporations, for many corporations, they can decide to leave Slovakia, or they can try to optimize their taxes, or it will limit their profitability in a different way. So the final result, the bottom line of such intentions of the government would be a hindrance of economical growth, substantial hindrance, and also of productive employment, because I emphasize this productive employment, not just this socialist stimulating of employment through public work, but productive employment. Then higher prices, lower standard of living, and also lower income for the state budget. This means that these attempts to increase taxes is not just harmful for the economy, for creating value, but it is also ineffective in fighting deficit. It is ineffective and it is harmful. Well, I have 1 more minute. So if we consider this to be ineffective and harmful, then it is fair to say, to give an alternative. And this alternative should be built on the attempt of the government to consolidate public finances without increasing taxes, and it should stay on significant cuts of public expenses, but also it should be supported by systematic changes, structural systematic changes and reforms focused on eliminating the mentality of entitlement. Eliminate the mentality of entitlement and dependence of people on the social system, this cultural dependence on the state in making business, in investing, and so forth. Several examples from the Conservative Institute. As for cuts and savings in public expenses, I'd like to take the rest of my time to finish this. For example, even the Prime Minister and various others say that there is no more space to make any significant cuts in public expenses. It is not true. There is still overemployment, significant overemployment in civil service, and we can lower the number of people. That means we save on their salaries, not by cutting their salaries, but on lowering number of people. If we lower number of people by 20%, then it can bring savings of more than 600 million euros per year. Similarly, it is possible, and I think even desirable, to lower expenses of procurement of goods and services, including public procurements and so forth. If you lower these expenses in the central government by 20%, This can bring us additional savings of 350 million euros, and further elimination and reducing of redundant or blown up institutions. There were some examples from the social sphere. Obviously, this should be very focused when we try to consolidate public finances, and I'm a fan of the fact that child benefits should not be universally entitled. That people should not expect that they get something from the money of others. So, for example, if we do not provide benefits to only to the poorest people, this can get us additional 200 million euros. And further examples in subsidies for state enterprises, for example, transportation, that could bring 400 to 500 million euros. And further examples which can suggest that the level of 1.5 billion euros that government is trying to get from our pockets could be economically feasible to get this by cutting public expenses. I'm saying it is possible, but there is no political courage and willingness to do this, and these are two different points of view. And I'm also trying to say, and by this I would like to finish my presentation, maybe we can talk about this in discussion, this should be supported by systematic reforms aimed at transferring responsibility of the government for our life to the responsibility of people and individuals and families for their own lives. And this is the key message